this alive? No? Is it now? Oh, now it is. Okay. Our next speaker is Jason Webster, a preparator at the Oakland Museum of California in Oakland, California. And he will be speaking to us about the Lintel for Men's Spirit House.
Good afternoon. I'm Jason Webster, on-call preparator, mount maker for Oakland Museum of California. I recently constructed a series of mounts for a Haus Tambaran 20-foot lintel. Translated, Haus Tambaran means men's spirit house. The lintel originated in Papua, New Guinea. By definition, courtesy of Merriam-Webster, a lintel is a horizontal architecture member spanning and usually carrying the load above an opening. This presentation will detail the creation of a series of mounts used to support a lintel. One primary mission of Oakland Museum of California is to preserve California culture, a culture infused by cultures from all around the world. The following is a quote, a synopsis of what Pacific Worlds, the show where the lintel was displayed, strive to achieve for the museum visitor. Turning the idea of California as the western frontier on its head and repositioning the state as the east coast of the Pacific, Pacific Worlds weaves together objects and ephemera from the Oakland Museum of California's collections with contemporary Pacific Islander artwork and community voices. Among the dozens of artifacts which required mounts for Pacific Worlds exhibition, several objects, like this 25-foot outrigger canoe pictured below, presented unique mount challenges. The most challenging of all was the house lintel. Here are a couple of examples of how a lintel, such as the one displayed in Pacific Worlds, are displayed in traditional and contemporary New Guinea. Carved with images of hornbills and ancestor figures, the lintel traditionally hangs in a place of prominence above the door of the spirit house. The tradition is carried on in contemporary culture, as evidenced here by the lintel displayed in front of the National Parliament building in Papua, New Guinea. Stage 1, conservation. At our end in Oakland Museum, displays started with intensive conservation. Acquired in 1967, the lintel had not been displayed for decades. The object was dry brushed on painted surfaces and vigorously vacuumed on unpainted surfaces. Holes and losses were filled with tinted glass microballoons and methyl cellulose or gelatin. Conservation's consensus. The lintel is fit for display, but due to surface instabilities, primarily in the paint pigment, the entire surface is not to be handled and is not to be cradled by a mount. This was an ear-raising proposition. But one of the best things about being a mount maker is the challenges we embrace. So I lowered my ears and I got to work. Stage 2, the mounts, which I have for dramatic effect subtitled, A Symphony of Steel and Ancestor Worship. To avoid handling the surface of the lintel, all pre-installation work is done with the object flat on its back and facing upwards. A wooden mock-up deck is constructed which spans the 20-foot length of the lintel. Now at some time, before the lintel was acquired by OMCA, the lintel was cut in half, leaving two 10-foot sections. An initial set of 4 mounts are created, 2 for each end of the 2 sections of the lintel. The mounts conform to the carved concave back of the lintel. They stabilize the object, level, and return the lintel to its natural form. Stabilizing leveling mounts. Each of the 4 mounts pivots side to side and up and down off the base. The base of each mount is bolted to the deck. This allowed me to join the two sections of the lintel and fine-tune placement with relative ease. I've used this sleeve method of attachment many times. It can not only make a mount adjustable, but detachable as well. The curved top of each mount is forged from 1.5-inch steel. I've always enjoyed implementing traditional blacksmithing techniques into my mounts. Here I am heating a large section of the curved top of a leveling mount. Actually going to go back to the last picture. The rest of the mount is made, The rest of the mount is made from 1.25-inch tubing that sleeves into 1.5. Now, because they're both made out of 1/8 inch, that makes a really tight fit, which then is really secure. And it's welded to a 1/4-inch base plate. I've added set screws on either side to add additional strength. The mount pivots on a 3/8-inch bolt, so once it's uprighted, that will really secure it. There's also 2 1/4-inch set screws at the bottom here. Lintel center joint. The lintel was originally carved from a single tree, and to display the artifact correctly, it was imperative that I line up the 2 cut sections perfectly. The adjustable mounts allowed me to do this successfully and with a minimum amount of handling. And now that the lintel is stabilized in a flat position, it is time to tackle uprighting the artifact for display. Spanning the top edge of the lintel are 11 carved holes originally used to lash the lintel to a Haus Tambaran. Hanging mounts, a play with 11 parts. To evenly distribute the weight of the lintel, a custom mount is made for each of the 11 carved holes. The height of each mount is determined by the contact point with the artifact and its distance to the deck. I added a cross brace on most of the hanging mounts to provide extra strength. So now we have mounts supporting mounts. If used without the leveling mounts, the lintel would certainly hang uneven. Used together in an upright position, the 11 hanging mounts take the weight of the object, while the leveling mounts effectively lock the lintel in place. In earthquake country, a mount is not doing its job if it is not anticipating a little shake, rattle, and roll. Each of the 11 hanging mounts is constructed of 1/2-inch steel round welded to a steel base plate. The contact points with the lintel are hand forged. The only visible element of any of the mounts are the slightly curved tips of the hanging mounts, which I faux painted out. Formed with flame. Each of the 11 hanging mounts were heated and the ends hammered flat. Each mount was modified to fit its own contact point with the lintel. I did this either by more hammering or by grinding. Each contact point is padded with 1/4-inch velar. Now we come to attachment. The hanging mounts are attached to the deck with the leveling mounts already in place. In 2 cases, the distance between the lintel and the deck was too narrow to feed bolts through the deck. So I have 2 exceptions to the rule. Up to this point, I am working on a mock-up deck and creating a template so that all the mount bolt holes can be transferred to the final display deck. To solve the height issue with the 2 mounts, I decided to make them in 2 parts. When the lintel is installed on the final deck, the bases of the 2 hanging mounts are installed with the leveling mounts. Then the lintel is placed on the leveling mounts, and last, the 11 hanging mounts are installed. So at this point, the mounts are complete. Attaching the hex head bolts to the deck was tight, but it works. The mounts are done. So now I'm at final preparation before the test lift. All the mount holes have been marked on the template on top of the mock-up deck. The lintel is removed and the final holes are drilled through the deck. The back of the deck is raised slightly in order to tighten the bolts. The lintel is installed for the first time with all 15 mounts intact. It is time for the test lift. Up to this point, everything had been a theory. It is time to test the theory. And to my great relief, we had success. The lintel does not budge when lifted into display position. My ears stay where they are, and the surface of the lintel was never touched. Stage 3, installation. The lintel is to be installed 10 feet in the air. The deck has been equipped with removable eye hooks along the top edge to facilitate the lift of the 20-foot plus structure and artifact. The deck will hang on a cleat. The top of the deck will be screwed to the cleat. Two Guinea lifts are set up side by side. Each will slowly lift half of the lintel simultaneously. Once the lintel is at the height of the cleat, the lifts roll the deck over to the cleat and slowly lower it. The screws are attached through the top of the deck into the cleat. And the lintel is installed. I was really happy to get this photo because it was very difficult to photograph this piece. It's so long and it's in a quite confined space. You can't really get back from it too far. Pacific Worlds encompassed a large variety of artifacts, from native spears pictured below the lintel, to California-made surfboards, grass armor, and intricate hand-woven textiles. Here you can see where the eye bolt was placed for installation. Once the lintel was installed, the eye bolt was removed and therefore not visible from below. This photo is also a good example of how the object curves over its 20-foot length. The distance from the lintel to the deck drastically changes over its expanse. This emphasizes the need to create mounts that not only take the weight of the object, but mounts that hold the lintel's shape evenly. Here's a good view of the mounts from the side. There's a hanging mount, and behind there, one of the leveling mounts. Next to that photo is a good example of the carved hornbill and ancestor figures, which alternate over the length of the lintel a total of 19 times. And 6 months later, back to rest. I'd like to thank all involved for helping bring to light this wonderful artifact which lay dormant for so long. In particular, I would like to thank my fellow Pacific Worlds mount makers, Abby Lawton, Gina Borg, and Maggie Lamb. I'd like to thank the lead preparator of the show, Ryan Jones, with whom I brainstormed the lintel mount concept. Steve Briscoe, the senior preparator at Oakland Museum, for encouraging me to submit this presentation. And last but not least, my dog, Bullet. Thank you.